Tonight's episode includes a Manta Sleep affiliate link, which helps support the show at no extra cost to you. If you've ever tried sleeping with a regular sleep mask and found that light still gets in around the edges, or the mask presses against your eyes and just feels uncomfortable, Manta Sleep takes a different approach. Their masks are designed to give you a true blackout experience while keeping pressure off your eyes, so you can actually relax and forget you're wearing one. They also have several different versions depending on how you sleep, and one of the coolest is their Bluetooth audio sleep mask. It combines the blackout mask with built-in audio so you can listen to music, white noise, or even your favorite sleep stories without having earbuds in your ears all night. And for a podcast like this, that combination just makes sense. Block out the light, put on a story, and let everything else disappear for a while. If you're looking to upgrade your nighttime routine, check out Manta Sleep and find the mask that works best for you. You can find a direct link to them in the description of each episode. They also ship worldwide. Thanks for supporting the show. Now, let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, and may this quiet hour find you gently, just as you are. Let your shoulders soften, let your hands rest, let your breath come and go like a small tide moving beneath a moonlit shore. Tonight's story is about an old brick cottage, a sleeping garden full of blooms and the tender hush of rain falling at bedtime. Imagine for a moment that you are somewhere safe and warm. Outside the window, evening has gathered in a soft blue fold, and the last light of day rests on the sill like a folded shawl. The air is cool beyond the glass, but here, where you are, there is comfort. There is a quilt with a familiar weight. There is the faint scent of lavender, clean cotton, and rain waiting in the clouds. Somewhere nearby, a kettle has gone quiet. Somewhere far away, the world continues on. But it does not need you now. Breathe in slowly, as though you are drawing in the scent of damp earth after a summer shower. Breathe out and let the day loosen its hold. Whatever you carried can be set down beside you. Nothing more is required. There is no door to answer, no path to hurry along, no thought that must be followed to its end. There is only the sound of your breathing, and beyond it, the story beginning softly. In the village of Brindleford, where the lanes curved like ribbons around gardens and low stone walls, there stood a little cottage made of warm red brick. The bricks were old, older than anyone in the village could remember, and each one had been shaped by hand long ago, when the fields beyond the lane were still wide with grazing sheep and wildflowers. Some bricks were smooth from years of rain. Others held tiny dents where straw had once pressed into the clay before it was fired. In the afternoon sun, the cottage glowed like an ember. In the rain, it deepened to the color of cinnamon and chestnut, and seemed to settle more firmly into the earth. The cottage belonged to a woman named Elowen, who was known in Brindleford for her quiet ways, her steady hands, and the garden she tended with patience rather than pride. She did not hurry the roses into bloom or coax the beans up their poles with worry. She simply learned the garden's rhythm and kept it company. Each morning she opened the back door and stepped into the brick courtyard with a mug of tea warming her palms. Each evening she returned there with a lantern to see which flowers had folded themselves closed and which had chosen to keep a little brightness for the moon. The courtyard behind the cottage was paved in bricks laid in a gentle herringbone pattern. Moss grew in the soft seams between them, fine and green, like velvet embroidery. At the courtyard's center stood an old rain barrel beneath the gutter, and beside it, a stone basin where sparrows bathed on warm mornings. Around the edges of the courtyard, beds of flowers leaned toward the cottage walls. There were foxgloves with bells pale as cream, sweet peas curling up twine, marigolds with sleepy orange heads, and moonflowers that waited all day to open when the light turned silver. Beyond the courtyard, a narrow path led into a larger garden. It passed beneath an arch of climbing roses, then wound between lavender, sage, and soft gray lamb's ear. Farther on were fruit trees, a little greenhouse with cloudy panes, and a low brick wall beyond which the meadows rolled away into dusk. In spring, the garden smelled of rain and green stems. In summer, it smelled of beeswax, warm stone, and petals opening. In autumn, it smelled of leaves and apples. But on the evening this story begins, it smelled of bedtime rain. All day the sky had been gathering itself. Morning had arrived pale and mild, with soft clouds passing over the roofs of Brindleford. By afternoon the clouds had deepened, layer upon layer, until they looked like folded wool. The air grew still. The swallows flew low over the lane. In the garden, the poppies bowed their delicate heads, and the leaves of the apple trees turned their pale undersides toward the sky. Elowen saw these signs and smiled, not because she was cleverer than the weather, but because she had always liked the feeling before rain, when the whole world seemed to pause and listen. She spent the late afternoon preparing the garden to receive it. She lifted a fallen branch from the rosemary bed and laid it beside the woodpile. She tucked a loose vine back against its trellis. She gathered the washing from the line, folded each piece slowly, and carried the basket inside. From the greenhouse, she brought a tray of small clay pots, each planted with seedlings that had only just begun to lift their faces. She placed them along the kitchen windowsill, where they would be warm through the night. The kitchen was small and square, with a brick floor that held the memory of daylight. Copper pans hung from hooks above the hearth. A bunch of dried lavender dangled near the door. On the table lay a loaf of bread beneath a linen cloth, a little dish of butter, and a jar of blackberry jam. Elowen lit a lamp as the room grew dim, and its golden light filled the cottage gently, touching the brick walls, the shelves of blue cups, the dark wooden beams overhead. Outside, the first raindrop fell. It was so soft that it might have been a leaf settling on the roof. Then came another and another, each one tapping a different place. The gutter, the rain barrel, the broad leaves of the nasturtiums, the greenhouse glass, the brick steps by the back door. The garden received the rain without surprise. The soil darkened. The rose petals trembled. The moss between the courtyard bricks brightened as if waking from a dream. Elowen stood in the open doorway with her shawl around her shoulders, watching. She did not step out at once. She simply listened. The rain made many small sounds, none of them hurried. It whispered in the herbs. It pattered along the windows. It drummed lightly on the upturned watering can. Down the lane, the roofs of Brindleford shone, and smoke from the chimneys folded low in the damp air. At last she slipped her feet into wooden garden clogs and stepped onto the bricks. The courtyard was cool and shining. Rain touched her hair and cheeks, gentle as a greeting. She moved slowly, carrying the lantern in one hand, though there was still enough twilight to see. The flame within the lantern fluttered behind its glass, making the wet bricks gleam in patches of honey-colored light. The flowers seemed different in rain, not less beautiful, only quieter. The marigolds gathered themselves inward. The foxgloves stood still, holding tiny beads of water along their throats. The sweet peas gave off a soft green fragrance. Near the wall, a cluster of white blooms had opened, pale and luminous in the dimness. They were the moonflowers, unfurling at their own unhurried hour, turning their faces not to the sun but to the misted evening. Elowen loved them for that. She loved the way they trusted the dark. She walked the path to the greenhouse, where the rain made a delicate music on the slanted panes. Inside, the air was warmer and smelled of damp clay, tomato leaves, and old wood. The glass blurred the garden into a soft watercolor of green, brick, and rain. Along the benches, seedlings rested in their pots. Some leaned toward the window, some toward each other. A small vine had wound itself around a bit of twine, almost tenderly, as if holding hands with it. At the far end of the greenhouse was a shallow tray of bricks, not ordinary paving bricks, but small unfired ones Elowen had shaped from clay gathered near the stream. She used them in the garden to edge the herb beds, and every few weeks she made more. They sat now beneath a cloth, drying slowly. When she lifted the cloth to check them, she found they were still soft at the corners, holding the faint marks of her fingers. She left them uncovered a little while, letting the warm, damp air move over them. Her grandmother had taught her to make such bricks when Elowen was a girl, not for building houses, only for mending garden borders and making little paths where feet might wander. Her grandmother used to say that a garden liked to know where it could rest its edges. Beds needed boundaries, not to shut them in, but to give their abundance a shape. Flowers could spill over, time could creep across, rain could soften everything, but the brick border remained, patient and low, keeping the gardens dreaming in gentle order. Elowen thought of this as the rain deepened. She replaced the cloth, lowered the lantern, and stood for a moment in the hush of the greenhouse. Somewhere above her, water slid down the glass in silver threads. Somewhere beneath the benches, a cricket began a single, careful note, then paused, as though pleased with how it sounded in the rain. When Elowen returned to the cottage, dusk had fully arrived. The garden no longer showed every stem and leaf, but rather shapes and glimmers. The brick path shone darkly underfoot. The rain barrel murmured as it filled. From the lane came the faint sound of a door closing, and then the village settled into its evening quiet. Inside, Elowen warmed a pot of soup over the stove. Steam curled upward, carrying the scent of carrots, barley, and thyme. She sliced bread, spread it with butter, and ate at the kitchen table while the rain kept steady time. There was comfort in the smallness of the room, in the low ceiling, and the round lamplight, in the way the window reflected her face, and the shadowy shelves behind her. Each spoonful was warm. Each breath came easily. The cottage seemed to breathe too, expanding and settling with every gust against the eaves. After supper, she washed the bowl and spoon, then poured a little warm water into a basin for her hands. She dried them slowly and looked out toward the courtyard. The moonflowers were brighter now, pale shapes floating beside the brick wall. Beyond them, the garden had become a soft darkness full of rain. It was her habit on rainy evenings to walk the house before bed. Not because she worried, but because she liked to thank each room in her own way. She began in the kitchen, checking the stove, laying the kettle ready for morning, setting a cup beside it. Then she walked into the sitting room where a small fire burned low in the grate. The fireplace was built of the same old red brick as the cottage, though its edges had darkened from many winters. Above it, on the mantel, were little things gathered over years: a smooth river stone, a blue feather, a dried rose in a glass bottle, a brass key with no lock. Anyone remembered. The sitting room had a deep armchair by the hearth and shelves filled with books whose pages smelled faintly of dust and vanilla. Elowen took one book down, not to read much, but to feel its familiar weight. It was a collection of garden notes kept by those who had lived in the cottage before her. Some entries were written in faded ink, some in pencil, some in a hand so small and tidy that the words looked like seeds planted in rows. There were notes about weather, harvests, first frosts, unusual butterflies, and one summer when the hollyhocks grew taller than the window. Elowen opened the book near the middle and found a page she had read many times. At the top was written in her grandmother's hand, "Rain before sleep makes the roots remember." Beneath it were observations about night-blooming flowers, the comfort of brick warmed by the day, and the way moss brightens after a storm. Elowen smiled. The sentence felt less like advice than a blessing. She carried the book to the chair and sat while the fire settled into embers. Rain ran down the chimney with a soft hiss now and then. The cottage creaked contentedly. Elowen read a few lines, then let the book rest open in her lap. Her eyes drifted to the window where raindrops gathered and slipped, blurring the garden lantern outside into a golden star. And in that softened gaze, the evening seemed to widen. Not in any startling way. There was no flash of magic, no sudden opening of the earth. No voice calling from beyond the wall. It was only that the familiar things of the room grew deeper. The red bricks of the hearth appeared warmer, almost as if they held tiny sunsets inside them. The dried rose on the mantel seemed to remember the bush from which it had come. The blue feather shone faintly in the lamplight. Even the brass key, with no lock to claim it, caught a small flame of reflection and held it. Elowen had always felt that some houses did not merely stand, they listened. This cottage listened more kindly than most. It listened to rain, it listened to footsteps, it listened to the quiet hopes folded into ordinary days. And because Elowen was tired in the soft, clean way that comes after useful work, she let herself believe for a little while that the cottage was listening to her too. The rain fell more steadily, wrapping the roof, the garden, and the lane in a single sound. Elowen's thoughts drifted back to the bricks in the greenhouse, soft-edged and resting beneath their cloth. Clay and water shaped by hand, left to dry, later warmed by fire. It seemed to her that bricks were made of patience. They began as mud, humble and yielding. They accepted pressure, they accepted form, they accepted heat. And afterward they became something strong enough to shelter a life, hold a path, edge a bed of flowers, or cradle a hearth where someone might sit on a rainy night. The blooms were patient too, though in another way. They began with secrecy tucked into seed and soil. They rose without sound. They turned toward what nourished them. Some opened in morning, some in dusk, some only when the air was wet and the world was quiet. Not one of them hurried to become itself. The thought pleased Elowen so much that she closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the fire had lowered further, and the room was dimmer. The book had slipped gently against the arm of the chair. For a moment she listened, not just to the rain, but to all the small silences between the raindrops. There was a hush in the cottage, and inside that hush, a feeling like being rocked. She rose, stretched slowly, and carried the book back to its shelf. Then she took the lamp and walked upstairs. The staircase was narrow, with a handrail polished smooth by many hands. Its steps gave small, familiar sighs beneath her feet. At the top was a landing with a round window overlooking the back garden. Elowen paused there. The glass was stippled with rain, and through it she could see the pale moonflowers along the wall, the dark shape of the greenhouse, and the soft line of the brick path curving away beneath the rose arch. The lantern still burned near the door, its glow blurred and gentle. She thought she might go down again to bring it in, but then she saw how kindly it lit the rain, and she left it where it was. Her bedroom looked out over the courtyard. It was a simple room with white curtains, a wooden bed, a quilt in soft faded colors, and a small table holding a candle, a book, and a bowl of dried lavender. The walls were lime-washed, but along one side the old brick showed through, warm and uneven. Elowen liked that wall best. It made the room feel rooted, as though the cottage had one hand placed gently against the bed, keeping watch. She changed into her nightdress and folded her clothes over the chair. She brushed her hair with slow strokes, listening as the rain tapped against the window. Then she blew out the lamp and let the candle take over, smaller and softer. The room became all shadows and glow. The brick wall held the candlelight in its hollows. The quilt waited, turned down and inviting. Before climbing into bed, Elowen opened the window a little. A cool breath of rain-scented air entered the room. It carried the smell of wet brick, lavender, earth, and flowers resting in the dark. The sound of the rain became clearer, close enough to touch, yet still gentle, not a storm, not a downpour, only bedtime rain, steady and kind. She settled beneath the quilt. The mattress gave a familiar creak, and the pillow received her head. For a while she lay awake, not with worry, but with the pleasure of listening. Rain on the roof, rain in the gutter, rain in the barrel, rain on petals, rain on leaves, rain on brick. Outside, the garden softened itself for sleep. The roses lowered their heads, each petal holding a bead of water. The lavender darkened and breathed its calming scent into the damp air. The moss between the courtyard bricks drank deeply, becoming brighter by the minute. In the greenhouse, droplets gathered along the pane edges and slipped down in quiet trails. The seedlings in their pots stood small and brave, roots reaching into the dark soil. Beneath their cloth, the new bricks rested, still becoming what they would be. A little snail traveled along the edge of the brick path, carrying its spiral house through the silver wet. It moved without hurry, leaving a faint shining line behind it. A moth found shelter beneath a broad leaf. Somewhere near the rain barrel, a toad blinked slowly from the shadow of a fern. These small night creatures made no disturbance. They belonged to the rain, and the rain belonged to them. In her bed, Elowen's breathing grew slower. She remembered just before sleep how her grandmother had once told her that every garden has a hidden lullaby. In some gardens, it is sung by bees in the heat of afternoon. In others, by grasses moving in a field. In this garden, the lullaby came in rain, when the bricks shone and the blooms bowed, and the whole cottage seemed to float on the dark, fragrant hush of evening. And as the rain continued, that lullaby filled the rooms. It moved through the kitchen where the cup waited beside the kettle. It touched the sitting room where the embers glowed faintly in the hearth. It climbed the narrow stairs and passed the round window. It entered the bedroom through the small opening in the window and settled over the quilt like another blanket. Elowen slept. The cottage kept watch. The rain washed the roof in slow silver lines. It traced the old mortar and darkened the garden wall. It slipped from leaf to leaf and gathered in the hollows of stones. It filled the barrel, softened the soil, polished the brick path, and carried the scent of blooms through the night. The village of Brindleford slept too, its windows dark, its lanes shining, its chimneys quiet beneath the clouded sky. Hours passed gently, though no one counted them. In dreams, Elowen walked through a garden made entirely of evening. The paths were red brick, warm beneath her bare feet, though rain fell softly all around. Along the borders grew flowers she knew and flowers she had never seen, each one opening slowly as she passed. There were blue blossoms shaped like tiny lanterns. There were white petals transparent as moonlight. There were golden blooms that gave off the scent of honey and fresh bread. Yet nothing in the dream asked to be understood. It simply invited her onward, step by step, breath by breath. At the center of the dream garden stood a small brick arch, lower than the rose arch outside, and beyond it was a bench beneath a tree full of pale leaves. Elowen sat there. The rain did not make her cold. It touched her like kindness. Around her the flowers rested and opened, as if breathing in their own quiet way. The bricks beneath her feet hummed with the deep warmth of earth. Far away, or perhaps very near, someone was singing without words. She knew, in the easy knowledge of dreams, that the song belonged to the garden. It sang of clay becoming brick. It sang of seeds becoming blooms. It sang of rain becoming sleep. It sang of all things that change slowly and are never rushed. It sang of roofs over tired heads, of hands in soil, of lamps in windows, of the comfort of being held by a place that asks nothing but presence. Elowen leaned back against the tree and listened until the song and the rain were the same. Outside the dream, the candle had burned low and gone out. The room was dark except for the faint grayness of rain clouds beyond the window. The brick wall stood quiet. The quilt rose and fell with Elowen's breathing. Downstairs, the house settled once more. A tiny creak in the beams, a soft shift in the cooling hearth. The lantern in the courtyard finally flickered and dimmed, leaving the garden to the rain and the night. Near morning, the rain became lighter. Its steady patter thinned to a whisper, then to an occasional drop falling from the eaves. The clouds remained, but they had softened at the edges. In the garden, everything shone. The brick path was clean and dark. The flowers bent beneath droplets that caught the first pale hint of dawn. The moss was bright as spring. The rain barrel was full. Elowen slept on, wrapped in the deep peace that follows rain. And now the story grows quieter too. The cottage rests, the garden rests. The blooms have opened and folded as they needed to. The bricks have held the warmth of yesterday and the coolness of night. The rain has done its gentle work. Nothing more needs to happen. There is only the soft room, the softened dark, the sound of water slipping from the leaves. There is only breath, slow and easy. The body may grow heavy, the mind may drift, thoughts may pass like clouds beyond a window, seen for a moment, then gone. The old brick cottage remains in the rain-washed garden, peaceful and still. Its walls are steady, its beds are warm, its flowers are safe beneath the quiet sky. And wherever sleep finds you, may it find you kindly. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.